Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents, and welcome to the 2021 Summer Vacation Series. We're getting to know comics from around the world who performed on our isolation comedy online comedy show, during 2020. I'm your host, Valerie, and my sometime co-host, Ms. Purrington, will join us if she damned well pleases. Keep up with us. I'm going to have to do sound editing. I changed my introduction and I'm tripping up all over it. Okay, keep up. Okay, clean break. Stop. All right, here we go. Keep up with us at comedywham.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at comedywham or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, live shows, and an events page for live shows in Austin and Houston. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene and the global comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, I am sitting down with somebody who is the co-host of the podcast Thank You for Being a Podcast, with her co-host Anthony Decimito, covering, of course, the Golden Girls. And they did so in an incredible 5-year run. She was also the host of The Living Room, a comedy show that she hosted in her home. And she is the founder, aka head bird of Bird City Comedy Festival, which launched in Phoenix in 2016. And she is one of our favorite comics on our 2020 isolation comedy show. And as her website is proud to tell you, she is comedian, writer, mom, raccoon. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Genevieve Rice. Hi.
Oh, hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
I'm realizing I need to update my website pretty desperately. I actually, there was a funny little dispute. I don't know, maybe it's funny. Maybe I don't know. For a while on there, because I made it, I think in the middle of the night, one night in like 2013. I declared myself America's funniest biker.
Okay.
And which I thought was hilarious as someone who's never been on a motorcycle. It's like, oh, okay. And I forgot about it. And then this year, I got messaged by an agent that said, I represent somebody who is America's funniest biker.
Oh.
and they asked me to remove it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And I mean, they were like scared to tell me. They were like, he's like, because the agent was somebody I know. So they were like, I've been nervous to tell you. Great.
I almost thought that the way you were going is that you were somehow going to be, you were somebody who was representing Rocket the raccoon was coming after you. And
I think that's next.
No, that's next. Okay, well.
I mean, there are a lot of options there. I could have become America's funniest biker. I don't know. Yeah. It's in time.
Yeah, I mean, you're too young to have had your midlife crisis, right? So sure,
getting there.
Well, Genevieve, it is a pleasure to get to talk to you. This, for many reasons, a lot of people hate the whole online show, but one of the reasons that I love the online show and the whole Zoom comedy thing is I got to meet people from everywhere. And you were on our show for at least a couple of times, and you were always so fun. And as part of my research, I watched some of your clips and I'm like, oh, no wonder I liked her. You just have this very warm, welcoming, comedic style, and the way that you write your comedy, you kind of lead us down a path and then you do a turn, and you're just a very warm and welcoming person. And then, you know, as I did my research, the fact that you did a podcast based on the Golden Girls and that you hosted shows in your home, it's like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. And then you started a festival. So those are all the hits, and we will get into most of those. But I do like to start my podcast with a question, my icebreaker, and that is, Genevieve, tell me one word to describe your past.
Checkered. I don't know.
You seem so wholesome. I find that very surprising.
But yeah, I don't know. I actually have done quite a bit. I'm almost 40. I turn 40 January next year. And so I've done quite a bit. I was born in Alaska.
Oh wow.
And lived in Oklahoma most of my life. and yeah, it is surprising. I I have farm in my family, which I don't know. And I work as a real estate agent now as my day job. And I've been doing comedy off and on since 2007.
You actually started comedy in college.
Yeah.
What prompted you to start? Had you been a performer in school and into college, or was there just you had a fancy for it?
No, I wouldn't consider myself a performer at all. And I just really loved comedy. And I always sought it out from a young age. Like I would watch comedy boom really hit when I was like probably about 7 or 8. So I would watch like Evening at the Improv and Caroline's, and I would just stay up to watch like late night sets. And I would, when I got access to Comedy Central in like the late 90s, I was like super obsessed and would just watch everything.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Oklahoma City, and I went to school in Norman, Oklahoma, and wasn't much of a comedy scene there.
They're not known for it, but
it never really occurred to me like, oh, I could just go to an open mic or something like that. Like, I think now that's a pretty common idea that that's how people get up on stage and do comedy.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, one of my friends actually had to start a show. They actually started an open mic, and I was like, oh, this is how you do comedy. Okay. So I got 5 minutes together, thought I would do it once, and then I just kept doing it. So
wait, why did you think you would just do it once? You just wanted to be supportive for your friend? And why?
I just thought, first of all, I didn't think I would be that good. I thought it would be kind of fun, and then it would be like one thing I did once, and okay, I tried stand-up comedy, and then I didn't expect to be hooked as it was. And I didn't expect to do, I basically, I really did have like a magical first time where it was just like, my jokes worked, like, and then of course, I also said it was my first time about 1 billion times. That may have been most of my sets. And, and I was surrounded by friends and people I knew that were supportive, and yeah, it was, I was like, oh, wow, I kind of didn't realize how this worked. And now I can kind of see how it works. And I'm like, oh, I would like to try this more. And so I wrote another 5 minutes expecting it to work again.
Oh, you didn't realize that you don't have to write a brand new 5 minutes every single time.
Oh, yeah.
You're one of those. Every once in a while I come across one and I just want to say, oh, it's so sweet.
And I've had people too do that to me. Like in my first year, I had someone else that was like, I noticed that you did the same thing you did last week. I was like, yeah, I have like 3 minutes total that works. So I'm doing that 3 minutes and then whatever 2 minutes new that like a year into comedy, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all this stuff that you just don't know
Yeah.
as a newbie.
Right.
Yeah. And
So from that first night, what was it that hooked you? Because I mean, I guess in hindsight, you realize the biased environment that you were in with all of your friends and support there, and you know, by telling the audience this is your first time, they tend to be a little kinder to you. So
I think I just really liked the idea of writing. I loved writing jokes. I was already I was a writer before that. I actually went to school for journalism and I worked at different papers and stuff like that. So I really loved the feedback. And this was before really social media had like taken off. And like, I just liked that gratification of, okay, see if this will ever get a laugh or was, yeah. And I really enjoyed that. And I think having that outlet was really important. And I just felt different than I kind of ever, I kind of think of myself as a bit of a shy person. And like I still do very much. And like, and this was so different and interesting to me as a person that had incredible stage fright that I just was like, I just got to keep doing it.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next, is given that you weren't a performer, but you liked that creative outlet of being able to express your creativity through the written word. How did you overcome that stage fright? Or maybe by being able to express your written word, you lost some of the stage fright element of being a performer?
I mean, I think in the first couple of years it was booze for sure. So it was that, and then it was also just, I mean, I think especially in the first couple of years, I think you really have to have a lot of delusion to do this. And like you really have to like, oh right, I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to, they are enjoying my 3 minutes of comedy stretched into 10 minutes. Like they're not seeing through me at all.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to get me on late night. This is going to, yeah. So I think I had that. And I think part of it was just, I think it just was experience. Cause I don't think I really got over it until maybe about a year and a half in, where I didn't feel extremely nervous and wasn't like, oh, I've got to write out my entire set word for word, like over and over, and I have to have it memorized and like. And I think once I realized that, I had more flexibility. And I think also I quit drinking in 2015. And I think once I quit drinking, I actually got to be a better performer. I got to be, in my opinion, I felt like I was, okay, I can do this without alcohol. Now I want to do, now I like the way that my energy feels on stage. Like I can kind of feel how I'm more present and not kind of numbed by the alcohol, and I'm kind of looking at the situation and reacting to it.
Yeah. So. I mean, there's certainly a lot of comics that have come forward and they don't drink, and it's been freeing for them. So yeah, it's I can't imagine going on stage under the influence. I just feel like, you know, you have to control so many elements. And yes, there's a big element of being able to riff and be a little bit of an ad-libber on stage. But I just feel like alcohol takes away some level of control of your environment.
It definitely does. It definitely does. I mean, it's not only that, you save money.
Yeah, well, yes, there's that. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's about, I mean, even if you get generous and give them a, $5 for your soda water or whatever, but
Yeah.
even then,
Yeah.
there's no uncomfortable wait for your credit card at the bar after a bad gig.
Right. You are, I guess, depending on where in your college career you were when you started comedy, how many years were you doing it before you graduated college?
That was my last year of college.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I was curious how it was doing comedy. You found something that you really enjoyed doing, but you're in an environment where there's not a lot of options, maybe not a lot of showcases to get booked on, to start getting a little bit, more into the career progression.
Well, I got into it. Oklahoma City at the time really had about, I'd say maybe like 15 to 20 comics that were doing it at least a couple times a month. And when I first started, we had this bar show at Othello's, which is where I did my first set. And that was wonderful. I think that's still going today. And then we had the Looney Bin in Oklahoma City, and you could sign up for the mic every 2 weeks. So that was it, or at least that was available to me as like a newbie.
Yeah.
You could eventually get like you could get an MC or even a feature spot at the Looney Bin, which I never got there. But
I mean, a year in, that would have been a big thing to accomplish. And you're working on your college degree too, so you were plenty busy.
Yeah.
And then, from what I understand, you headed straight to Phoenix.
Yeah, I moved to Phoenix. I was engaged to a guy that lived out there, and then I moved there. We promptly broke up, and I stayed. It's okay. I met someone new.
Yeah,
you
nice. Seem like you've recovered quite nicely. And I don't know, maybe this is just my impression, but Phoenix has a really good comedy scene. It's kind of one of those, it's under the radar. It's probably fairly similar to what Austin has, maybe a little bit smaller, but I don't know that for sure. But I mean, is that something that has grown recently, or has it just always been a quiet yet understated presence?
It definitely was. When I moved there in 2008, it was definitely bigger than Oklahoma City scene. Oklahoma City scene at that point had expanded a little bit to a few shows and like a few bar shows and stuff and stuff like that. But Phoenix at that point had at least a show or a mic at least every day of the week. And they had a couple of clubs. Because they had Tempe Improv and I think Comedy Spot, and I'm trying to think if there was anything else at that point. But there were like a few places, there was quite a few places you could get up. I did have a little bit of trouble finding places when I first got there, because I didn't know where to find mics. Like the last time I just I had.
You had your friend.
Yeah, I had friends. I had friends that were doing comedy, and they're like, "Oh, you go up, you do places," and they're like, "Oh, you should come to." People are like, "Oh, I run a show here. You can do it." And getting that first step was really tough. And I actually found an open mic in the newspaper.
Oh my gosh, the good old days, newspapers.
I and that's how I went to my first couple of mics, and was just things I discovered in the newspaper, and I'm like, it seems wild to me now.
Yeah. Right.
Showed up, and I brought my then fiance along, and I'm sure that precipitated the end of our relationship.
Did you have an adjustment period for doing comedy in Oklahoma City versus doing comedy in Phoenix? If I mean, you'll correct me, but if I assume that your type of comedy has been consistent all along, it's pretty adaptable to any environment and any audience.
I I don't know about any audience, but I did. I was kind of, when I first started, I was kind of doing a little bit more like quiet shock comedy, like kind of the way I would say Sarah Silverman was maybe the closest. Sarah Silverman, maybe like a slightly dirtier Mitch Hedberg, where I was doing kind of short jokes.
Okay.
A little bit of that. And I wasn't doing as many stories and stuff like that as I was. And I was doing fairly well in Oklahoma City. I was getting stuff. I even won like I didn't win. I placed in a contest that was like the best of Tulsa. In like my first year. And I was like, what's okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I was told it was because I was a cute girl, and I was like, you know what, I'll take that too.
Yeah, sure.
Fine. But it was nice. It was nice performing somewhere where I like everything seemed new. Which is good. I still was quite nervous on stage. So if anything deviated from normal, I think I had a little trouble weathering it. I didn't quite have those chops yet. So that was a little tough, because I wasn't although I was writing jokes, I really wasn't getting up that often. I was maybe getting up like, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 times a month at most. And you just don't get better fast that way.
Right.
So
so was there something that sparked you to do more, or did you learn to adapt? I don't know if it was because of your schedule that you could only get up twice, 2 or 3 times a month. Did you adapt to making the most out of the few times, or did you at some point decide I have to go up more?
I think when I got to Phoenix, there was a lot more opportunities for stage time. So I took advantage as much as I could. And I still was, like I was starting a new job, and stuff like that. So I still didn't get up a ton, but getting up a lot more and realizing, okay, if you bomb here, there are other places you could go. That's the benefit of having like a larger, of being in a larger city.
Right.
More people to piss off.
Yeah.
More people to bomb in front of, and it's
yeah.
But I was pretty lucky. I got up a few places right away where I did pretty well, and that always seems to that is the way to get more bookings, is you basically do well and someone comes up to you and they say, oh, I've got a show here, I've got a mic here, I'd love for you to do this. And I also, I had a little bit of the benefit of, I really wasn't, I was one of the only women in the scene at the time. There was a few other women that were doing it, maybe 4 or 5 that I can think of, that were going up pretty regularly. And you do have the benefit of being a novelty, to commodify it.
Right.
That I hope isn't dehumanizing, but
right.
So you have, which is of course both a pro and a con. I would get booked for things and then I would be told, like they wanted a big pat on the back, like you're the first woman I've booked in 6 months.
Oh
You know,
gosh.
or like I've never had a woman here before. Like,
Oh my gosh.
which is, things have improved that way where you don't see that often anymore, but it was pretty commonplace back then, and it was like, great.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with this.
That's kind of an eye-opening thing that I'm hoping that my little summer vacation series idea, I realize how wonderful the Austin comedy scene is, but hearing something like that really makes me take for granted that since I have been watching Austin comedy, which has been almost 10 years now, like there have always been strong women
Yeah.
on lineups. Like I just can't even imagine going to a show and there aren't women like that feature prominently. So it's kind of like,
You guys have a
wow.
wonderful team.
Thank you.
I mean, every time I've gone there, I've had the best time.
Yeah.
It's just been great. I did Altercation there a couple times. I love doing your online show. It's just been a blast. And
Yeah.
yeah. And here, of course, I mean, that got better. I mean, there are more shows that opened around town and more clubs that opened up. And then I also did more shows elsewhere. I think, and that, I mean, going to LA and, you know, I made a point of, I think starting in 2013, going to LA a couple times a year.
Okay.
And I think that was really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And as somebody who goes to LA only a few times a year, how do you break into, because there's so many shows there, but everybody that just knows a little bit of LA comedy knowledge, they're like, oh, well, then the only place you could perform is at the Comedy Store or at the Laugh Factory. So how do you start finding your way around the LA comedy scene?
well, the first time I went, I just did mics. I was just going around and seeing shows, and I did mics, and like that was, I really had no expectations. I came down and I watched it was the very first LA Riot Comedy Festival.
Okay.
Which I had never been to a comedy festival before. And I think I'd been to maybe a show at SF Sketch Fest a few years before, but I didn't really, I like seeing something like that and how it was put together. I was like really fascinated, and I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if Phoenix had something like that.
That was well, what's the word? A predictor of things to come.
Harbinger of doom.
Harbinger. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Dark omen.
No.
But and then I got lucky. I did a couple of mics, and someone was like, I book a show here in West Covina if you want to do a show. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to your show in West Covina. And it was great. It was like the best show. That is Chatterbox, which is,
I've heard of it, actually.
it's so good.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
And that was really nice. And you know, and then once you know people, it gets a little easier, but it's still hard. It's hard to get on shows if you don't have credits.
Yeah, yeah. So you're balancing out your time with going to LA, which I think is fantastic. It's like a nonstop flight, or it's a fairly quick drive, so it's something that's manageable. At what point did you start feeling comfortable? Like at what point, you had mentioned that after maybe 2 or 3 years, you start feeling more comfortable on stage and the momentum is moving in the right direction for you getting more shows. Did you reach a point where you started feeling more confident about yourself?
I feel like it took me a while, and it really took me a while to get, because I felt like I kind of I would level up in performance. Like I felt like I got a lot better, and I think like 2011, and then I felt like I really got a lot better in like 2015. Like I felt like I kind of reached something there. And sometimes it's like you reach somewhere and you have to kind of like you kind of have to grapple with your new skills and like what you can do. And sometimes it's a little bit of an adjustment.
Can you ascribe any one thing in particular to why you feel like, okay, 2014 was like a big year for me to level up?
I think first of all, I was writing a lot on social media, and I feel like that really helped me become a better joke writer, in a way. And
under the old 140 character limits, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Which took art and skill for sure.
I felt like that I was starting to get some notice from that too. I started doing like the at midnight hashtag games and stuff like that, and I was like really growing my audience online that way. And it helped. Like I was like, and then I was trying to figure out how that would translate into the stage, and sometimes that would work, sometimes it didn't. But for me, I think it was just I just was writing more and performing more, and I think once you write and perform more, you get more comfortable on stage. Yeah. And I think and then I started meeting more people in other cities and started performing at festivals elsewhere in 2015. And I think that was huge for me, just seeing because I think sometimes, scenes kind of, for better or worse, kind of dictate your comedy. Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes they can elevate you and sometimes they can kind of keep you down. And seeing what other people are doing elsewhere kind of helped inspired me, like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. Or they have these kinds of shows, or they've got, like that's how they work together to get this done. So yeah, what was kind of a nice thing about my actually my hometown, Oklahoma City, has been very nice, is it's not a big scene, but they've all kind of come together to make all these wonderful comedy shows. And they actually were attracting like all these incredible like alt comedy acts that we couldn't even get to Phoenix. Like oh
wow.
They got Paul F. Tompkins to come to Oklahoma City. And
wow.
I haven't been to Phoenix. Yeah. And it was like they worked together. They formed Oklahoma City Comedy and started doing these shows at the fairgrounds that were incredible. And I think that really helped me from a comic and producer side.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I didn't put a timestamp for when you were doing the living room, but you also hosted another show. I didn't include it in the opening introduction, but I know you start producing your own shows, and you also launched the podcast in 2014, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're doing all of these things that a lot of comics do as they grow and develop, and then you decided to launch a festival. So it's like it's all very linear. It all makes sense. It's standard progression, and then you just decided to jump into the pit of a volcano and line.
Decided to throw it all away. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it was I didn't really I had kind of done a show called The Snark Show and
That's
starting
what it was. Yeah.
and which was it was a roast show. It was a roast show where people would go up and do stand up, and we had a panel of writers, and they would write roast jokes about the comic for the host to read.
Oh,
It was pretty fun. Roast shows can get out of hand.
yeah.
But we had a good time. We had a good
Yeah.
time doing it. But I did that for a while, and then I started seeing more house shows pop up, mostly in the music scene, actually. My husband is a jazz guitarist, and I saw that in a few ways, and I was like, I wonder if this would be fun for comedy. If nothing else, I could invite people to my house, and it's just kind of like a party.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did a couple of years of those. I think unfortunately the pandemic killed that off. Pandemic plus my kid. So
yeah.
but I really enjoyed putting those on. Yeah, I really enjoy, like I would like make a bunch of food and decorate and basically we just have a good time.
Yeah. So those were that was going on up through March of last year. It sounds like.
I think the last one I did was probably 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, my daughter.
Who is adorable, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's adorable, but I also moved. My place would be a good place to have a show, so maybe it's something I will do eventually, probably as we come out of this pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, having a child as you're kind of hitting a stride, and your daughter was born in 2018.
She was born in 2019. She was born.
Okay.
Yeah, she was born in April 2019, and yeah, I kind of had a difficult pregnancy, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering how do you juggle everything? The festival, your comedy career, being wife, being a mother. Yeah, that's a lot for a single human being to handle.
Basically I try to I try to be careful. I think now I have to say no to more things. I have to say no to more things, and I have to not feel bad about saying no to more things.
Yeah.
There's just but with the festival, I tend to work on it a little bit every day when I'm in festival season. And that really helps. I did have a babysitter when I was planning the last one, which would have taken place in March 2020.
Jeez.
But yeah, it is something it's been nice with the online comedy, like how much you can perform as a mother with a child. It does make it a lot easier. Because it was something I was performing, I'd say 2019, 2020, I was back up to, like 5-6 shows a month at least, depending on the month, maybe more, maybe less.
Yeah.
But it's been nice to doing online comedy, the fact that you can just do it in your house.
Right.
You just have to check your Wi-Fi connection. That's been a lot easier.
Yeah.
So
you kept pretty busy with online shows. And have you, I'm sure you know this, but Austin has basically been doors open technically since September of last year, but they've gotten like now it's just crazy. Everything's open.
Phoenix is the same way too. Phoenix, we shut down, I think in April. It was like March and April, everything shut down. And then it kind of started up again. And then we were like one of the highest, not only states in the United States, but places in the world for COVID.
Gosh.
and then they were like, oh, maybe we should stop. We should stop for a bit. So we stopped for maybe like a few months. And yeah, there are people that have been like performing the entire pandemic.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And
you're a parent, so you have, added considerations. Like I'm a parent as well. And so I go as safe as I can be, because I know that I'm coming home to somebody that's not vaccinated. Well, now, in 2021, the reason, the rationale is, well, I'm coming home to somebody who's not vaccinated. So I have to be very careful from that. Last year, it's, well, I don't want to pick anything up. I can't, I can't disappear on my child.
I mean, yeah, that's part of it is, and also part of it is, my husband when he's out of school, he can watch her, but during the pandemic, it's during the school year, I'm childcare. I'm all of childcare.
Yeah.
So there's not much I can do. Like I can't, and now she's 2, she probably can't get vaccinated till at earliest, like maybe this fall.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a consideration of in-person shows. And so
how do you, and how have you, so the online shows, I feel like there's a drop off in how many there are now that things are opening up. So how do you work on those creative parts of your brain in this time?
Well, we've as under the umbrella of Bird City, we actually started a mic on Thursdays called Little Bird Mic that's been running for about a year.
Okay.
And we have plans to run that through at least the summer.
Okay.
And we're still getting quite a few people coming every week. It would definitely I'd say our zenith of attendance was probably like January, February, when we're getting like 25 people at a mic, and that's been nice. We've attracted a really nice group of comics that are, sharing new jokes. And we're also like always seeing like new comics and welcoming them in the fold. And like, that's been cool.
Yeah.
We've also been doing on Saturday nights, I've been doing a booked online show that we've been streaming different places.
Okay.
And that's been cool. That's and that has been interesting, who's been available during the pandemic and who's adapted and who hasn't to online shows.
Yeah, that was a big, thing that we observed too, is who was completely hands off, no way, I'm not doing it, versus sure, why not? Give me something to do when I'm
it is an adjustment. Like it definitely, you definitely have to learn what to do, and you have to kind of learn the challenges, internet connection.
Yeah.
And Zoom bombs and stuff like that. But it's like, and there are a couple of comics that I asked to do a show and they were like, no. Or I did a Zoom show and it was bad and I don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm, and I think a lot of people had to adjust after that. Like I was very lucky. The very first Zoom show I did was very fun. I did Emma Montgomery's his magic hat show. And that was perfect. That was like really fun, and that was something that, like, he's I don't know if you know who he is. He's very he's a Seattle comic who's very gregarious and like and very funny and surreal and out there. And it was like kind of the perfect. It was something I'd want to go to as an audience member too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we definitely had that advantage with Colton, because Colton Dowling was so gregarious and outgoing, and
He's so funny.
yeah, yeah. So you had to cancel Bird City Festival, in-person festival, last year. Are you making plans for having it happen in 2021?
We're planning on 2022.
Okay.
I had thought about 2021, and the thing about doing it in person in Phoenix is you can't do it in the summer.
But why?
So yeah, and I mean, maybe I can if I really want to get cheap hotel prices, but I don't want to introduce people to the desert that way. There's not enough water.
Yeah.
And we have Arizona also has a really good festival called Big Pine Comedy Festival in Flagstaff. That I worked with them in the very beginning, in the first couple of years. So I don't want to, they're in the fall. I don't want to take away from them in the fall. So summer gives us time, I figure, where we don't have to stress out too much about whether everyone's vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having hand sanitizer everywhere, and and whether people, because I mean, some people aren't flying at this point. Like I haven't flown since 2019.
Yeah.
I think that's a consideration when you have people coming out, but and it gives us more time to advertise the festival too.
Mm-hmm. And so your festival has typically happened in the spring of every year. Okay, so you'll come back to the spring of 2022.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the venue that we were going to do our 2020 festival did close, but there are other venues that are great, and
yeah,
and there are also more places that are opening up. So
I'm not trying to ask this out of a, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, but Austin has so many comedy festivals.
Yeah.
And I just want people, I'm leading up to another question too about Austin versus Phoenix, but for comparison's sake. So how would you compare the Bird City Festival to a festival that we might see here in Austin? Like I think anyone listening to this will know Altercation Festival. It's a very, bless his heart, the most DIY festival by JT Haberstadt. Oh my God, he does. I mean, I love that he makes his badges by, by himself.
Yeah, he's just like Satan, but with a heart of gold.
Right? That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I like what he does. I mean, one thing they do is they have, with altercations, they have one stage.
Yeah.
And they have one stage, and it's just a great lineup, and it's like a good hang at that one place for like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's really cool. I usually have multiple stages.
Okay.
I usually have different places. I try to keep it all within a mile of each other, so it's not too far. Ideally, what I would want to do is places that are like next door to each other.
Sure.
Which is sometimes hard to do. The place that I wanted to do it last year had 3 stages in it, and I was like, yes.
Oh.
And then it closed right away.
Oh gosh.
Which is sad for them.
Yeah.
But that's, and of course we're not as big as like a Moon Tower or a South by Southwest.
Mm-hmm. How many days?
We usually do, I've done as many as 4, and I think 2 to 3 is the sweet spot. So I probably won't ever do one that's longer than 3 days.
You must be a zombie by the end.
Yeah, the end of the year I decided to do 4 days. I was like sick. I was like, I can't do that again. Yeah, I typically do, and I do quite a bit, and I arguably do too much to learn to delegate. So
I was going to ask you, surely you have a team of people that help you.
I have people that help review the videos, because at this point the last year we reviewed videos, we got 750.
Oh my gosh.
And I did watch all of them. I promise I watched at least 4 minutes of all of them.
Wow.
But I do want it. I want to have other voices and see what other people think. And I also want to hear about, it's also, I try to bring in other people from other scenes too, that have maybe worked with this person and can tell me things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, which always helps. But yeah, I have since learned to farm out some other aspects of it.
Yeah.
So.
As word of advice from one parent to another, you are, by the time it's spring 2022, you're going to be hitting an age where your child is so endlessly fascinating, and you just want to spend all of your time with them, depending on the when exactly the terrible 2s or terrible 3s happen. But yeah, that's such a great age that my hope for you is to delegate as much as possible so that you won't feel that tug of, I have this obligation. Plus you've got a job too. So,
Yeah.
you're being pulled in many different directions. So, delegate.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It gets important. And it's, I could also have just Fiona headline. Give her a producer credit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My son is now like, we go to shows together. So it's kind of cool that through my addiction, he's seen a lot of great comedy, and he goes to shows with me, and he understands, and he knows a lot about what Comedy Wham does. So it's kind of fun to do something like that together. Not saying that you're necessarily going to do that with her, but
when she was a baby, pre-pandemic, we took her to a couple of shows, which I'm sure people loved.
Yeah. Well, depending on her volume level, yes.
She did throw up during someone's set, and I felt so bad. Like the loudest baby throw up.
Oh God. That should be the name of a comedy album. The loudest baby throw up. Well, one of my objectives with my 2021 summer vacation series is I'm talking to you who is, whatever, based in Phoenix. Tell the audience that is sitting here in Austin why they need to come check out the Phoenix comedy scene.
Well, for starters, we really have a nice variety of performers. Like we really have something for everybody. We have quite a few clubs. We have quite a few bar shows. We have quite a few like alt comedy shows. We have a pretty great improv scene too, and a storytelling scene that's incredible. And we have a lot of shows that kind of mix genres. And some of those did go away during the pandemic, but a lot of them are coming back or making plans to come back.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's kind of nice about Phoenix is it is a big city. It's not exactly what you think of when you think of an art scene, but that's kind of the perfect, it's a great developing scene where like if you want to go and start something, you can. If you're not seeing it in the, you can start something and there'll be an audience for it.
Mm-hmm. I went to Phoenix twice last summer, and I was very impressed by the comics that were at the larger venues, and I loved the art museum there. So
Oh, cool. I got
I,
there.
nice. And then tell us, so here in Austin, as with probably any small scene, we have comics who graduate to LA or New York. Tell us the name of somebody who recently left Phoenix for one of the big cities that you think we should be paying attention to.
Ooh, there's so many.
I know. If I was asked this question, I'd be like, nah, I can't do it. I can't pick.
Yeah, I can't pick just one. Let's see. Michael Turner just left. He's always great. He did so many cool shows here in Phoenix, and then now he's in LA. Jessie Johnson is really funny, and has a really wonderful Instagram. I know she's been doing Instagram videos. She's like a filmmaker and comic, and she's really sharp. Let's see. My good buddy Matt Storrs in New York is always doing wonderful things. Gosh, I'm so sorry for the people I left out. I do like you.
Okay. Well, Genevieve, as we start wrapping up, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to cover? Do you want to plug your podcast?
Well, you can listen to all the episodes of Thank You for Being a Podcast are still out there, as far as I know.
How did you, what struck the idea of doing this podcast?
We both Anthony and I just started talking about TV shows that we liked. And I mean, we're very different people. I'm a white Southern lady, and he's a gay Mexican man. And we hit the cross point at Golden Girls. We both watched so much Golden Girls, and then we kind of found that was like as we went along, we found that was like kind of an odd cultural touchstone for people. Mm-hmm. So it not only became about recapping the series and kind of rewatching it and but like kind of what very different people thought of it. And we had people that were like huge Golden Girls fans that were on it. And we had a few people that had never seen an episode.
Wow.
Which were either people that were like very young, like 20s, or like people that were like teenagers when it was on, and they were like, I'm too good for Golden Girls. I'm like, you're not too good for Golden Girls. And we just, and it was also a show too, where, I mean, there's still not very many shows where like older women get to shine.
Yeah.
And shine they did. So
very much so. Well, I think people should go check it out. I hadn't listened to it before, but I saw some of the guests that you would have on, and I'm like, oh wow.
We were very lucky. I mean, we got Wendy Liebman, I think, in the first year, like came to Anthony's apartment.
Oh my gosh.
It was so great. And we were wonderful. We got Cristela Alonso, all sorts of great people. Jackie Cation did it.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. Wow. Well, check it out. I know that there are people listening that love Golden Girls, so they would probably very much love this podcast. Okay. Well, I am going to wrap up with my closing question. Are you ready for it? Genevieve, one word to describe your future.
Um, let's see. I think I'm also gonna go with checkered.
You're one of those. It does not happen very often, but somebody just, nope, same word, both words. Stay tuned for Genevieve Rides Bikes, her next podcast.
Coming to you from jail.
Oh no. Don't do that to that sweet daughter of yours. All right. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Genevieve Rice, based in Phoenix, Arizona. Tell us where we can find you on social media and promote any projects or shows that you have on your mind.
Well, I am at Genevieve Rice on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And there is a GenevieveRice.com. I have not updated it in years. I'm trying to. I'm hoping to get that done this summer, but I've been saying that for years. So no promises. You can follow Bird City at Bird City Comedy. We are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Twitch. And we have our open mic on Thursdays, Little Bird Showcase at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, I'll say Pacific time, because I don't want to go into our weird time zone. That's the easiest way. That's a free show if you're a comic and want to do some time. We've been having a blast with it. I do a book show called The Birdcage on Saturdays. It's not every Saturday, but it's a lot of Saturdays. And that's also 8 Pacific. And that's a donation show. And we've been having a blast with that too. So yeah, that's about it.
All right. Very good. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Genevieve Rice got to be the comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. Modest one. This has been Comedy Wham presents Genevieve Rice. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Genevieve.
Thank you.